The festival was supposed to be a night of color, music, and laughter, but for Keanu, it became a trap. Beneath the paper lanterns and swirling dancers, strangers in painted masks closed in, smiling for the crowd while driving fists into his ribs, planting something in his pocket that could destroy him. By the time the music stopped, blood mixed with confetti on the cobblestones, and Keanu knew this was only the opening move in a much deadlier game. The city square was a sea of color and noise. Strings of paper lanterns swayed overhead, spilling soft light onto cobblestone streets, packed with revelers. Drums pounded in a steady rhythm, mixing with the brass of a jazz band on the scent of grilled meat, sweet pastries, and spilled beer tangled in the warm summer air. Laughter rose like waves. But beneath it all, Keanu's senses stayed sharp. He moved through the crowd with deliberate test-ups, scanning every face that preceded. His destination was clear. A small cave tucked behind the main plaza. That's where Daniel, an old friend and former investigative journalist, had promised to meet him. Daniel claimed he had something big, something that could topple more than Oni. Powerful name. Keanu had heard that kind of claim before, but Daniel's voice on the phone had been different this time. Urgent, almost desperate. Still, this wasn't a friendly reunion. Keanu felt it in the way. The hair at the back of his neck prickled. Someone was following him. He caught glimpses, a shadow cutting through that crowd, a man pretending to examine but looking straight at him, in the reflection of a glass display. He didn't break his pace, but every muscle in his body was coiled, ready. A group of children wearing festival masks ran past him, their laughter slicing through his focus for a second. Then, further ahead, a narrow alley opened between two buildings, leading toward the cafe. Keanu hesitated. Alleys were easier to control, easier to trap Samin in. He glanced around. Nubious threat. Still, the feeling wouldn't leave. His hand shifted, the strap of the messenger bag slung across his chest, tightening it against him. Inside was nothing incriminating, but in throng hands, even nothing, could become dangerous. Somewhere in the distance, a trumpet hit a sour note. The music wavered. Keanu stepped into the alley, eyes narrowing, breath steady. The festival was in full swing around him. But he knew, with absolute certainty, before the night ended, its joy would be drowned in something darker. The alley spilled him out into a smaller side street. The noise of the festival mentary, muffled by the tight walls. He could still hear the faint thump after him. But here, shadows ruled. Keena's eyes adjusted quickly. The street was strung with smaller paper lanterns, their light flickering in the breeze. A handful of people milled about, most of them in elaborate masks and costumes, playing their roles as festival prefers. The masks were painted in bright reds, golds, and blues, exaggerated grins and sharp eyes that distorted human expressions into something uncanny. A man in a harlequin mask waved him over with an exaggerated bow. "Come join the..." His voice was cheerful, but there was a strain beneath it, as if joy was only skin deep. Keanu shook his head and kept moving. Another figure stepped forward. This Oni, wearing a white fox mask, its painted mouth curled into a permanent smirk. "Don't be shy," she said, her voice low and velvety. The others began to circle suitly, closing in without drawing attention to themselves. Keanu's pulse slowed, not from calm, but from calculation. He scanned for exits. The narrow street he'd entered was behind him. Ahead, the path narrow Dagon blocked by more masked figures spreading to juggle flaming torches. The harlequin mask's hand landed on Keanu's shoulder. Firm, too firm. "Just one dance," he insisted. Keanu didn't move, didn't speak. His body shifted slightly, loosening his stance. He could feel the weight off their attention. Measured, deliberate, practiced. These weren't street performers. The circle tightened. Their movements were subtle enough that anyone glancing this way might still believe it was all part of the act. A woman in a red dragon mask spun past, her sleeve brushing Keanu's side, long enough for him to notice the telltale bulge of something hidden underneath. From somewhere in the main plaza, a trumpet wailed, the note sharp and ugly, cutting through the night. And just like that, Keanu knew this wasn't an invitation. This was the opening move. Things are about to turn violent. Are you still with me? Comment yes if you're still watching. The Harlequin mask tightened his grip on Keanu's shoulder. It was no longer a performer's friendly hold. It was a clamp. A claim. Keanu's jaw tensed. He shifted his weight slightly, preparing to break free. But before he could move, the man in two-eyed fox mask stepped into his path. Her painted smile gleamed under the lantern light. And then without, her knees shot forward. The blow landed square in his stomach. The air was driven from his lungs in a sharp grunt. His body folding instinctively, pain radiated up his ribs. Before Heckle straightened, two more masked figures moved in from behind. Rough hands seized his arms, wrenching them back until his shoulders strained. Keanu felt the crowd of performers press closer, their masks inches from his face. The air smelled of sweat, cheap fabric dye, and something metallic blood. Maybe. A ripple of sound came from the crowd further down the street. It wasn't alarm. It was laughter. They thought it was all part of the act. Another strike came, this time a hard fist driving into his side. Keanu's head dipped, his breath ragged. He could feel his heartbeat in his ears, steady but heavy, as adrenaline surged. Every instinct screamed to fight, but the tight formation around him made a clean move impossible without escalating it to chows. The Harlequin mask leaned in close, voice dripping venom. You've been walking in the wrong places, friend. His gloved hand patted almost mockingly from the corner of his eye. Keanu caught movement. A flash of red silk from Theatrical mask woman. She spun theatrically, her wide sleeve brushing against his torso. Something small and cold slipped into the breast pocket of his shirt. The plant, they were setting him up. The pressure on his arms tightened, forcing him down onto one knee. His palms scraped the rough stone beneath him. Somewhere above, music swelled again, drowning out the low grunts of his attackers. The festival's joy was their perfect cover. Keanu's gaze lifted just enough to scan the ring of faces. No masks around him. Their false smiles glinted in the lantern light, but their eyes were flat, unblinking. They weren't here to perform. They were here to make sure he didn't leave this street standing. The grip on Keanu's arms wrenched at her, dragging him fully to his knees slammed into the cobblestone, pain jolting up his leg. A kick landed across his ribs, sharp and deliberate. The crowd in the distance cheered at something happening in the main plaza, their applause masking the dull thuds of fists and boots, striking flesh. Lantern light flickered over the scene, casting distorted shadows of the masked attackers onto the walls. Grotesque quillhoots, twisting and lunging. The fox mask crouched in front of him, tilting her head as though studying a work of art. She reached out, dragging her knuckle across his jaw, then snapped her hand into a backhand strike. Keanu's head whipped to the side, the taste of blood flooding his mouth. Another blow came from behind, a heavy kick to his shoulder, forcing him into his side. Someone stomped on his forearm, pinning it, while another attacker rifled through his messenger bag. A metallic click cut through the noises. The Harlequin mask pulled out a sleek black device from his coat pocket. He knelt, shoved it into Keanu's shirt pocket, and patted it twice, sealing setup. You'll be the headline before sunrise. The Harlequin muttered, voice low enough for only Keanu to hear. The dragon mask spun again, throwing her dirge high into the air before catching it theatrically. Her flame flared bright, momentarily blinding him in that flash. Another boot connected with his back, the impact forcing air from his lungs. Keanu's fingers curled into the cobblstones, his mind calculating, not panicking. Every strike, every movement. They weren't trying to kill him outright. They wanted him bruised, humiliated, and carrying the planted evidence when Simeon found him. Somewhere above, a paper lantern popped in, the heat, the sound eerily like a gunshot. Several festival-goers turned toward Thiele for the first time, their smiles faltering. One or two phones lifted, recording. The fox mask saw it. Two. She leaned closer, her whisper a hiss. Smile for the cameras. Keanu's jaw clenched, his eyes thawed bloodshot and stinging, locked on Towers with a cold, unspoken promise. If he made it out of this alley, someone was going to regret leaving him alive. A boot pressed into Keanu's back, grinding him against the cobblestones. His cheek scraped the rough surface, feasting of blood mixing with the accrident of torch smoke around him. The laughter and applause of the festival still washed in waves, oblivious to what was really happening. Then through the thump of drums and clash of cymbals came a different sound. A young voice, high and sharp. They're hurting him. This isn't part of the show. The alley seemed to pause for half a heartbeat. The shout came from a boy no older than 12. Standing at the alley's mouth with a phone raised, its camera light flickened in. His wide eyes darted from Keanu to the circle of masked performers. The Harlequin. Mas snapped his head toward the sound, and his tone shifted. Cold. Urgent. Get him out of here. Two attackers moved toward the boy, but boy didn't back away. I'm recording this, he yelled, his voice cracking but determined. That drew the attention of a nearby woman, middle-aged, clutching a paper bag of groceries. She looked into Thiele, saw Keanu pinned to the ground, and her face hardened. Hey, what the hell are you doing? She shouted, pushing past one of the tortugulars. The fox mask straightened, her body blocking the view. But it was too late. The woman shoved her way into the ring, swinging her grocery bag at one of the attackers. The bag burst, apples and bread rolling across the stones. The distraction was enough. The weight on Keanu's back lifted slightly as the attacker's focus broke. He twisted, wrenching one arm free, the string tearing at his shoulder, but loosening the hold. From the plaza, more voices began to murmur. A couple of festival-goers peered in Teth Alley. Phones came out, the small red dots of recording lights multiplying. The masked group exchanged quick, silent looks, calculation, then retreat. Go, the Harlequin hissed. One by one, they peeled away, melting gently the throng of costumed dancers by into the alley. The fox mask lingered for a heartbeat. Her painted grin locked on Keanu before she vanished into the crowd. Keanu rolled onto his side, coughing, his ribs screaming in protest. But the momentum had shifted. They'd been seen, and that meant the hunt had just begun. Keanu pushed himself to his feet, his breath ragged, every muscle screaming. The masked attackers were already disappearing into the ocean of festival-goers. Their bright costumes and paint faces blended seamlessly with the crowd, a perfect camouflage. But they'd made a mistake. They'd been seen, and now people were pointing. Over there, someone shouted from behind him. A pair of uniformed festival security officers appeared at the far end of Thiele, radios crackling. They caught sight of Keanu, then of the Harlequin mask slipping into the crowd. One officer raised his radio calling for backup. The attackers moved fast, weaving between dancers, knocking over food stalls, and spilling drinks to slow pursuit. A torch juggler dropped his flaming baton, sending onlookers scattering in alarm. The confusion worked in their favor. Every second bought them more distance. Keanu ignored the fire in his ribs and pushed forward, following the flicker off the fox mask's red ribbon weaving through the crowd. His boots pounded against the cobblestones, past drummers pounding out a hypnotic rhythm, past laughing couples who only half realized that chase was unfolding in front of them. The Harlequin mask glanced back, his eyes narrowing when he saw Keanu closing in. He shoved a vendor cart into the path, sending skewers of meat crashing to the ground. Keanu vaulted it, his shoulder slamming Ginto, a wall of costumed dancers, was stumbled aside. Security was catching up to two officers from the north entrance, one from the plaza. A voice barked through a megaphone in the distance, ordering the crowd to make way. The fox mask darted into a narrow side lane, lined with strings of low-hanging lanterns. Keanu followed, his vision tunneling on her silhouette, but as he turned the corner, two more masked figures stepped into his path, blocking him. One swung a collapsible baton, the ethereal length of chain. Keanu braced, ready to fight, but a uniformed officer barreled past them, tackling the chain wielder to the ground. Another officer joined, spraying a burst of pepper spray into the Harlequin mask's face as he tried to intervene. The chase wasn't over yet. Somewhere ahead, the fox mask was still running and Keanu wasn't going to stop until she was down. The narrow lane exploded into chaos. The officer wrestling with the chain wielder forced him face first onto Thicabelle's tones, the clatter of metal echoing off the walls. The baton wielder tried to backpedal, but Keanu lunged, seizing the man's wrist and twisting until the weapon clanged to the ground. The attacker howled, dropping to one knee, just as another security officer slapped cuffs on him. Through the corner of his vision, Keanu caught the Harlequin mask staggering, eyes watering, and skin burning from pepper spray. He was still trying to push forward. Buta's second burst sent him crumpling to the side. Two officers grabbed his arms, yanking them behind his back and securing their strengths. "Got him," one shouted over the din. The noise of the festival shifted, confusion giving way to realization. People began to recognize the masks from the alley. Phones lifted higher. The crowd pressed closer, murmuring voices swelling into a tide of outrage. But Keanu's focus stayed locked on one figure, the fox mask. She had darted past the initial scuffle, slipping toward the south exit. He pushed through the knot of onlookers, ribs screaming, boots hammering against cobblestones. She didn't get far. The south gate was already manned by two police officers stationed for crowd control. When she tried to blend in with a group of dancers, one officer's hand shot out, grabbing her by the arm. She twisted violently, hissing something under her breath, but the second officer was already behind her, locking the cuffs with a loud metallic snap. The moment the restraints clicked, the fox mask's painted grin tilted toward Keanu. She held his gaze, eyes cold and calculating, as if promising this wasn't over. "Move them," a sergeant barked. The four captured attackers were marched back toward the main plaza, flanked by uniformed officers. The crowd parted reluctantly, phones recording every second, some cheering, others shouting questions. Festival lights painted the scene, English reds and golds, making the masked figures look even more grotesque in defeat. Keanu followed at a distance, his breath steadying, but his pulse still a drumbeat in his ears. The fight was over for now, but the night wasn't done with him yet. The captured attackers were marched in Teeth Main Plaza, their masks still on, but now twisted and smeared from the struggle. Lantern light bathed them in warm colors, but the atmosphere was anything but festive. The crowd pressed in on all sides, murmurs growing louder, sharper. Near the fountain at the plaza's center, officers forced the attackers to kneel. The Harlequin mask coughed and shook his head violently. The fox mask kept her chin high, as if the cuffs on her wrists were just an inconvenience, but their composure was cracking. Phones were everywhere, flashes popping like gunfire. Keanu stayed at the edge of the cordon, ribs aching, watching. His breathing slowed as he spotted the boy from the alley standing in the front row, phone still in hand. A female officer approached him, speaking quickly. The boy nodded, scrolling through his footage before handing the device over. Seconds later, the video played on a large portable police display. Angled Sabbath officers and onlookers could see. The crowd went silent. On screen, the scene from the alley unfolded, the masked figures circling Keanu, the sudden blows, the knee to his ribs. Every strike was captured in clear detail. Then came the fox mask's slight offhand, slipping the small black Devicento his pocket. The woman with the groceries could be heard, yelling. The attacker's retreat caught frame by frame gasps, rippled through the plaza. Someone shouted. They tried to Another voice yelled, "Arrest them all." The fox mask's head turned slightly, her gaze locking on Keanu through the throng. Even now, she managed a faint smirk, as if to remind him this wasn't the end. An officer reached into Keanu's shirt pocket, pulling out the planted device and holding it up. "This was intended to implicate the victim," he said loudly, his voice carrying over the noise. "Charges will include assault, conspiracy, and attempted evidence fabrication." The Harlequin mask finally broke, spitting a curse before being yanked to his feet. The crowd erupted, not in celebration, but in a simmering demand for justice. Keanu met the boy's eyes across Theckerton, giving him the smallest nod. Off thanks. The night's chaos had been caught on film, and now the world was watching. The plaza was still buzzing with shouts and camera flashes as the attackers were loaded into police vans. The fox mask was the last to be pushed inside, her head turning just enough to keep Keanu in sight. That faint, taunting smirk was still there, even as the doors slammed shut. Keanu exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the night in his bones. The bruises on his ribs throbbed with every breath. His shirt was torn, his knuckles scraped raw around him. Festival lights still glowed warm, but the joy they cast felt hollow now, like the paper lanterns. Beautiful on the outside, but empty within. The boy from the alley appeared at his side, still clutching his phone. "You okay, Mr.?" he asked, voice tentative. Keanu gave a small nod. "You did more than you know," he said quietly, his tone edged with gratitude. The boy smiled awkwardly, then melted back into the crowd, swallowed by the swirl of dancers. An onlookers thought a police sergeant approached, the planted black device sealed. "Inside an evidence bag. We'll get this processed. Whoever sent them wasn't after just your reputation. This thing, it's designed to transmit." Keanu's brow furrowed. "Transmit to where?" "That's the question," the sergeant said grimly, before moving off to coordinate with his team. Keanu stood there for a moment longer, the festival's music picking up again as if nothing had happened. Couples laughed. Vendors called out their last sales of the night. And somewhere in the distance, fireworks began to bloom in the sky. He turned away from the plaza, slipping Gento, a quieter street. The glow of lanterns faded behind him, replaced by the dim yellow of old street lamps. His shadow stretched long across thickable stones, swaying slightly with each step. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. No name, just a single message. Asterisk, asterisk, this was only a warning. Asterisk, asterisk, Keanu stopped walking. The street was empty, silent, except for the distant echo of the festival drums. He glanced over his shoulder, scanning darkness. No one there. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, his eyes narrowing. The game had started long before night, and now it was his move. The last of the police vans rumbled away, taking the masked attackers into Thederk. The festival's music had faded into the background, replaced by the quiet hum of night. Keanu stood under the dim street lamps, bruised but unbroken, watching the paper lanterns sway in the warm breeze. Tonight had been a reminder of something had learned long ago. The world doesn't always attack you openly. Sometimes it comes smiling. Sometimes it dresses itself in colors, laughter, and celebration. And sometimes the most dangerous blows are the ones hidden in plain sight, disguised as harmless gestures. He thought about the boy who shouted in Thali, breaking the illusion forever young. That single moment of courage had turneth tide. Without it, the attackers might have vanished back into the crowd, their setup complete, their plan successful. It wasn't just the police who saved the night. It was the ordinary people who refused to stay silent when something was wrong. There's a truth here we all need to remember. Injustice thrives in silence. when we see something wrong, even if it feels small, even if we feel outnumbered, speaking up can be the difference between someone's destruction and Simone's survival. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting in spite of it. Keanu also knew this wasn't over. The message on his phone, "This was only a warning," was proof that the real danger was still out there. But he wasn't walking away in fear. He was walking forward with clarity, knowing that light only exposes the shadows if someone dares to hold the lantern high. And maybe that's the real takeaway from tonight's chaos. No matter how elaborate the mask, no matter how crowded the stage, the truth will find a way to be seen. Sometimes, all it takes is one voice in the crowd to say, asterisk, asterisk, this isn't right. Asterisk, asterisk. So here's my question to you. If you saw someone cornered, hurt, or set up the way Keanu was tonight, asterisk, asterisk, would you speak up? Asterisk, asterisk, would you be that voice in the alley? If your answer is yes, let me know in the comments right now. I read every single one, and I want to hear from the people who refuse to stay silent in the face of wrong. And if this story gripped you, if it made you think about the masks people wear in our own lives, then do me a favor. Hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications so you never miss the next chapter, because this isn't the end. There's more to come, and trust me, the shadows haven't given up.